What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel. I just watched Love, Simon.
Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck on a Ferris wheel. One minute I'm on top of the world, then the next I'm at rock bottom.
So Love, Simon is the brand new film directed by Greg Berlanti, his first studio feature film on a big time budget. I've been a fan of this guy for so long, and I'm so glad he was finally able to make a movie, and it stars Nick Robinson, who I'm actually a really big fan of. I didn't love Jurassic World, I liked it as a movie, but this guy was really good in that film, and I knew he had some chops. I didn't think he'd be able to lead his own film, but he really does. And before we get started, as always, we have today's comment spotlight. This one comes in from Kazoo Kid. Kazoo Kid, thank you so much for your words. While I don't necessarily agree with you, Jeremy Johns and Chris Stuckman have been some of my favorite reviewers for so long. I really appreciate the sentiments, and I really appreciate you commenting on my video. Be sure to leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and to be in my comment spotlight, all you have to do is leave a comment, and hopefully I'll get to you eventually. Now that those things are out of the way, let's talk about Love, Simon. As always, I like to talk about the good, the bad, and then give you my score. Let's talk about the good. And I have quite a few good things to say about this movie. Look, I knew this was going to be a crowd pleaser, but I didn't necessarily think in my head going in that it was going to be an exceptional film. And honestly, the first 15 minutes, I'm like, all right, it feels like an early 2000s movie with trying to understand and be in the heads of high schoolers and teachers. It looks a little bit gimmicky, I understand that from the trailers, but once you really dig into the bones of how this movie plays out and the messages that it has, not just for specific people watching this film, but for everyone who watches, I really came to enjoy this movie. I think Love, Simon has something in there for everybody. It has messages to people that want to stand out, to people that want to be different. Of course, you expect that. But it also has messages to people that maybe are struggling with something, have parent issues, have sibling issues. There is something in this movie for everyone. And no, it's not extremely artsy filmmaking, such as something like Call Me By Your Name. It's not a movie that's going to go and get nominated for an Oscar, but it's a really good, relatable crowd pleaser for teens and adults alike. And even for people who don't necessarily believe in what this movie stands for, there's something in there for you. It's just good acting, good directing, and a solid script all around. I really enjoyed every single performance in this movie, from Nick Robinson to Alexandra Shipp. You have Storm from the X-Men, even to the parents, Jennifer Garner and Josh Duhamel. Let me take a second here. Josh Duhamel, I think, is an exceptional actor. If you guys watch the Hulu television series 11/22/63, I think that's the name. He was really good in that show, but he hasn't quite connected to me in a movie just yet. I've seen the chops. It's just the movies that he has been in, but oh my goodness, this movie, there's one scene in here where he is just really acting and doing a wonderful job, and I'm so glad to see him stand out. I'm glad he was in this movie. And my favorite part about Love, Simon is it's just straight up real. It's a real movie with real problems, people dealing with real things. There are awkward moments where I was actually cringing. There is a specific scene, it involves a football field. If you guys have watched the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Were you not just like, oh, why is he doing that? But that's the thing. I know people who have done things similar, not to that extent, but I know people who will do things like that, and that's why this movie really just, it captures what it is like to be in high school. And I didn't see that the first 15 minutes. The first 15 minutes, I was like, all right, this movie is just going to be another teen drama, romance movie, whatever you want to call it, but it really goes away from that, and it tackles so many different problems you don't expect it to tackle. I kind of liken it to Wonder that came out last year. You think it's going to be a story about one particular kid, and then you get into so many different stories and so many different problems surrounding all of these people, and it just gets deeper than you expected, and I think Love, Simon does that. I don't think this is a great movie per se. The filmmaking didn't really stand out as, oh, that is fantastic, and I've never seen that before, but every aspect, while it wasn't phenomenal, it was all solid. And if you think this movie is going to be preachy, I know it kind of comes off that way in the trailers. It's really not. It has something for everyone, and I do believe most people that watch this movie go to a theater, pay money for it. I think you're going to get a good experience. Another thing I love, you know, in a movie when they have like the fake iPhones and the FaceTime that's not realistic and the sound effects that don't work. I don't know if they were paying Apple or what, but they had actual iPhones and the actual noises that the phone makes, realistic FaceTimes and text messaging. It really appeased my technological senses that go off when things like that are super fake in a film. So for that, Love, Simon, I appreciate it. Now, like I said, this movie isn't exceptional or phenomenal. It's just a really solid movie that I honestly wouldn't mind watching again. You get those cheesy moments that you're kind of expecting. Yes, there's some dialogue that really doesn't work. There's a couple of scenes where I'm like, would the characters really do that in real life? You establish this realism, and then you kind of break it with these gimmicky, not scenes of comedy, I would say moments of comedy, because it's very limited. I know people are going to laugh at him. He is a funny character, but I wasn't the biggest fan of the principal in this movie. He has some funny moments for sure, and moments where he had me laughing, but he just came off as really creepy to me. He was saying really overly sexual things to Simon and putting his arm around him, and he had a weird, I'm not going to say the word I'm thinking of, but he had a weird vibe to him, and I didn't really appreciate that. Now, I know you're basing this off a book, and you have to kind of copy that character. He was a little too weird for me. And the bullies in this movie, man, they do some things in here that are really bad, and that he should have gotten in a lot more trouble for. Some of those moments with them, they just came off as a little unrealistic. You can't get away with things like that in a lunchroom. It's just, it's not realistic. So I watched this movie with Madison, and there's a scene where a couple of people turn on each other, which is another thing I like about this movie. It's all not the fault of the antagonists. There are protagonists that do things wrong here as well, but that scene kind of came off a little forced. I wanted it to be a better turn. I don't want to get into specifics, but she really kind of called that part out, and after thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, it could have been handled better. But like I said, those moments were unexpected. Usually when you have a protagonist, he is the good guy and he doesn't really go through an arc. Simon really goes through a solid arc here and becomes a completely different person by the end. And I really appreciate that. It pointed out his faults and the faults of the people around him. And then by the end, you understand each and everyone's motive. I'm going to give Love, Simon a very solid 78%. It is absolutely a top 5 film so far for me this year, and I'm glad that I was able to go and watch it a little bit earlier than when it comes out in theaters. Thank you guys so much for watching this review, for commenting, liking, and subscribing. You are the absolute best. Be sure to go check out my other reviews that I did this past weekend and my top 5 modern Disney animated movies list. I will catch you guys later.